All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Dieter. I am the event marketing manager here at 8Fig. Thanks so much for hopping on our webinar today. It's called Amazonomics, a word that we made up, all about being profitable on Amazon and some different strategies to help you be profitable. On today's panel, we have Carolyn Lowe, CEO and founder of ROI Swift, Chad Rubin, CEO and founder of Prophecy, and Jen Dobbins, Senior CS Manager here at 8Fig. A little bit more about our panelists. First up, we have Carolyn Lowe. She is the CEO and co-founder of ROI Swift, an Amazon and digital marketing agency that excels in growing small and medium businesses. Carolyn is passionate about helping consumer brands grow through Facebook and Instagram ads, paid Google searches, and Amazon marketing. In addition to helping her clients see larger profits, Carolyn is a mom of two and a licensed pilot. Thanks so much for being here, Carolyn.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Absolutely. Next up, we have Chad Rubin. Chad leads Prophecy's operations and oversees its strategy. He often speaks about e-commerce, Amazon, and leveraging AI strategies on webinars and conferences worldwide. He's also the author of the Amazon bestseller, Cheaper, Easier, and Direct. Prior to Prophecy, he founded Think Crucial and co-founded Skubana, I hope I'm saying that right, and the Prosper Show. He's also a father, husband, and loves coffee and tacos. Chad, thanks for being here.
Excited to be here. Thanks.
And last but not least, we have our very own Jen Dobbins. Jen is our senior client success manager here at 8Fig. She's helped hundreds of e-commerce sellers in their growth and success through flexible funding. Working in e-commerce, she's been working in the e-commerce space for a while now, everything from marketing to helping clients reach their financial goals. Outside of 8Fig, she is outnumbered in her household with her husband and two boys, but she enjoys a good glass of Cabernet to wind down from the chaos. So thanks for being here, Jen.
Thank you.
Cool. In today's webinar, they'll be discussing several smart strategies for being profitable on Amazon. We're excited to dive in, but first, just a few housekeeping things. If you have any questions, please drop them in the chat. We will try to answer them as we go, but we'll probably save a few for the end as well. And we have some designated time at the end to go through questions. So with that, thank you guys for being here, and let's get started. So profitability, why now? So a lot of people have probably noticed that profitability has been at like the forefront of conversations in everyone's minds, and sellers seem to care now more than ever. So I'm going to kick it over to Carolyn to kind of explain why that is.
Yes. So, as things have tightened over the last 2 years, I mean, we had the e-commerce boom during COVID, and people were getting acquired left and right. And so we talked to a lot of VCs and private equity firms here in Austin and New York and California, and they've really sort of tightened their belts in terms of, you can see the number of deals being done, the amount invested. Other VCs have told us they're not even writing any checks till 2025. So the landscape has definitely tightened. And, while revenue is, a vanity metric, profitability is a sanity metric. So I think it's a great time to talk with Chad and with 8Fig about what you can do about your profitability, especially as it relates to Amazon. But a lot of these things you can do for your e-commerce as well as Amazon business. So in terms of, the overview, it's gotten, one of the things that affects your profitability is, Amazon has really turned up the advertising. Sometimes it feels like there's more ads on the page than actual products, organic products. So, this is a pay to play. They hit 31 billion in ads revenue in 2021. And then I think, Chad, you told me it's the second largest line item after AWS. So
yeah.
When you've got to be there. And the other big stat that Amazon in Seattle has shared with us is that 70% of people don't make it past page one. So if you're not organically on page one, you're paying to be there. So want to make sure that we share with you all the best tips and tricks for optimizing your profitability, especially as you're having to spend more and more money on ad dollars these days.
And I just wanted to double click into profit for a second because I have my own e-commerce business and I've been working through getting it to a positive net income number for the past 8 months. And so I think what we experienced together in the past, let's just say year, is a storm, not only just rising interest rates, but everything just got a whole lot more expensive, whether it's inflation on sourcing and fulfillment, supply chain, driving traffic and driving traffic profitably with cost per click going up on the ad side. And so for me, like my P&L has been attacked and I've been working on righting the ship. And luckily I've been able to do that, but it definitely, I'm not alone in this process, but it's definitely been a hard environment to operate in.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you guys for kind of introing that up. So our first topic is going to be AI. Obviously, there's a lot of hype around AI tools, but how can it help you be profitable on Amazon?
Yeah, so the thing about AI specifically, a few things, like there's so much data on Amazon right now, and I think most softwares in this space just throw a lot of data at you. And the idea is to really take the data and leverage it to make decisions. And that's really the hardest thing. And it's about connecting the dots. And so in my opinion, big, large organizations have had access to AI for a very long time, but Amazon brands have not. Now, with more capital coming into the Amazon space, specifically around aggregators actually have spent a significant amount of time building a data science team so they can turn that data into decisions where they can meet their inventory forecast, they can meet their EBITDA targets. And so what I see that's happening in the Amazon world specifically is what happened on Wall Street when AI bots started taking over. So in the early 2000s, I think it was 10% of Wall Street was bots, and now it's almost 80%. And I see this as the biggest shift happening in the Amazon space right now that's happening. It was happening behind the scenes, and now it's happening actually across the board. And it's really happening in 4 areas. It's happening in listing creation and content, which I think is ubiquitous now. It's happening in pricing with Prophecy. There's some softwares in the ad space that claim that they're using AI, and I put that in air quotes. And then there's also inventory forecasting. But I do wholeheartedly believe that we're entering this period of the rise of the algorithm, and that most of the decisions that are going to happen on Amazon specifically are going to be happening behind the scenes with algorithms running those decisions in the future. And I think this is just referring to the sheer amount of data, and it's not just Prophecy that can unlock it. It's if you're building an AI or algorithms, these algorithms are going to unlock these aha moments that you never thought that you would or could. And to me, the AI is specifically fantastic at leveraging data to make decisions to impact your business and training it to achieve a result that you want to achieve. So AI would take signals and it looks for the right signals and separates that from the noise that it encounters to maximize the outcome that you want to achieve. And in my case, for example, it's how do I change pricing to maximize profit throughout the day? But in other cases, it might be ad spend, or it might be forecasting a proper cadence and connecting dots around inventory and supply chain logistics.
Great. Thanks for sharing that with
Yeah.
us. So next up, we have budget and cost of goods. So how can understanding your budget and your cost of goods sold really help you achieve profitability? And I think we'll kick it off to Carolyn here.
Yeah, so I think one of the questions we get asked all the time, every time we work with a new brand partner is, how much should I be spending? And we say, well, that depends on a lot of things. So as much as you hate to answer a question with a question, one of the things we have to find out is, what's your price point? What do your fees look like? What do your COGS look like? What do your gross margins look like? Is your ASIN a subscribe and save item? So a lot of these things will go into determining how much you should be spending on ads. To determine, we always start with sort of profit first. So if you've ever read the book Profit First, find out how much profit you want to make, and then go work on everything else below profit. So that's usually where we'll start is, okay, how much profit do you want to make? And then we'll go from there. So here's sort of an example. As you all know, products that are cheap and heavy are the worst products for Amazon. We love products that are at least $30 and small and light. I know you can't have every product be that way, but selling a 20-pound bag of dog food versus selling a $40 pair of women's underwear has very different unit economics in terms of your fees. So we'll usually start here. So say your COGS are 30% on a $35 item, and I'm definitely oversimplifying this. So I know there's a lot more that goes into that, but what I love about this is we're going to take you through ways to decrease all of these things. So starts with price, right? And then we take out your 30% COGS. That leaves you 70% margin to work with, right? And then say your FBA fees on this product, if it's fairly light, or maybe 26%, if it's not too heavy. And then we just throw in 2% for inbound shipping, storage, stuff like that. And then your brand SG&A, another 5%. So before you start advertising, this product would be at about 36% EBITDA in a simplified equation. So what that means is, okay, a lot of our brands are like, I'm happy with 20% because I want to grow. So I'm fine with a 20% EBITDA. And then we'll say, okay, great. Then your tacos will be 16%. Now, again, I'm oversimplifying this. If this is a subscribe and save product, a lot of our brands will say, I want to spend 30% in the beginning just to get a whole bunch of subscribers because I know I'm not going to have to pay for those again. So an example was like a natural cleaning products company that we partnered with. We did this with them and we sort of did this almost on a per product basis. So we would say, okay, these are your margins and your COGS and your target A costs for all of these products. And then I think what we're going to take you through next is, okay, how can I affect a lot of these metrics here? So I'm going to throw it over to Chad to talk about how pricing affects this.
I just want to talk about that fee stack for a second. So a few things you said that I think are interesting is one, I think it's very important for brands today to take any revenue embedded metric and convert it to a profit embedded metric. And I think that too many have been relying on these vanity metrics, like as you referred to, like revenue or ROAS, for example, or ACoS specifically. All of these don't include the cost of delivering the product to the customer. And so I think the profit focus, like you're referring to when you're running an ad campaign as an example, profit should really be the God metric that drives a lot of the campaigns and your budget for marketing. Second thing I just wanted to address around subscribe and save that I thought is interesting that I've been thinking about has been around when we think about lifetime value and we think about, for example, you gave an example of like, hey, I'm going to do a subscribe and save coupon for 30% to get the customer locked in, is to think about how are you defining lifetime, right? Because lifetime, is it a 30-day window? Is it a 90-day window? Or is it a lifetime? Because lifetime is forever and that just doesn't exist in e-commerce. And then the other part of the equation, which is the value, is how are you subscribing, pun intended, profit to that lifetime value subscriber, not just revenue on that lifetime subscriber. And looking at the churn and the cohort of your subscribe and save customers as they flow through, whether or not they continue to keep paying for it or they churn off after their first purchase or second purchase, or what does that lifetime value look like from a profit perspective?
Yeah. And Chad, that's a great point. And I definitely want to say we're not spending 30% on giving away in coupons. We're saying we'll spend 30% tacos on a product that's a high subscribe and save versus 15% on a non-subscribe and save. So we won't give away 30% in profit. We'll spend a little bit more in those first 60 or 90 days to get those subscriptions, but they're only getting the 5 or 10% subscription.
For sure. Yeah. I wasn't referring to your example. I was just thinking about subscribe and save in general. I got it. For my opinion, I think it's just about asking more meaningful questions when you think about subscribe and save, when you think about precision, which comes where I think profits come from precision. And I think we're in an environment where we need to be very, very precise to unlock profits in a tough environment, right? I think the challenges in business are amplified when you're operating under a tough macro environment.
Absolutely.
This is actually just an interesting example. So this is how we sort of evaluate and think about price and its impact to profitability and how it flows down in the P&L. So for Prophecy, and even if you don't use Prophecy, right, and you're thinking about making changes, even there's small changes with intent, small changes to price to maximize profit, when you aggregate and you think about, okay, the ASINs that we're changing, how do those average selling prices affect unit velocity? And how does that flow down to the profit on the bottom line? So when we're doing analysis for companies, right, we understand what the multiplier is for Prophecy because we know that price is the single largest lever that most Amazon brands aren't pulling that drive profits to the bottom line. There's this actual case study from Harvard Business School that said that a 1% increase in price can drive I believe it's 11% increase in operating profit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fascinating. But the interesting thing about Amazon specifically is that there's something called a knock-on effect on Amazon. So yes, increasing price may be the right decision, but it's not always the optimal decision because your price today affects your orders tomorrow. So if that's the case, then your price can actually affect your BSR or your market share on Amazon. And so you want to understand what is that impact because perhaps lowering your price could increase your demand and increase velocity more than offsetting that decrease in price to maximize absolute profit dollars and simultaneously earning you an organic spot in the Amazon SERP versus renting it with ad space. So just a lot to think about, but I think this is just precisely talking about what happens when you make a small change to price and what is that impact on your gross profit. And I think most people think about changing ad spend or they think about changing their listings, and most actually aren't testing and connecting the signals around pricing. And so I think when we think about the holistic view of a company in general on Amazon, right, you have to think about advertising as it's a pay to play game, but you need to be present. But you also need to be making changes to price, and you have to be thinking about your supply chain and how to forecast your supply chain and what's needed to actually keep the money flowing in. So I'm going to hand it off here to Jen, take us through a little supply chain.
Yeah, totally. So as Kitty mentioned, I actually started out on the marketing side of the industry, and I completely agree that carving out a budget for marketing is extremely important. I've seen so many of my clients in the past grow by really investing in their marketing and doing it in a smart way, like you're suggesting. But to add to that, understanding and taking time to really invest in your supply chain as well, as you mentioned, is crucial for a successful brand. And a few examples that 8Fig would highly suggest doing this is building relationships with multiple logistics teams, making sure that you've done your research, you have your feelers out there, and shopping around for better rates kind of goes into that as well. Really utilizing your current supply chain vendor to expand. So I've had a couple clients whose vendors, stopped working with them on a whim, and they've kind of had to look for other vendors or lean on vendors that they didn't really use and have a good relationship with. So having a really good relationship with your vendor is so important to have that support from them as well. And planning your inventory at least 3 to 6 months in advance. This helps with any stock outs to help avoid those or even plan for them. And planning a resilient supply chain and considering your customers' end-to-end experience is something that we always want to remind our sellers to do and not to forget about, because customers are very important. We want their retention. We want them to come back. So that's one thing that we do want to make sure that you keep in mind. And this kind of leads into understanding your full cost of goods and having a full grasp of your supply chain. So here at 8Fig, we do this by providing our sellers with a visual business plan. So this really allows them to always keep track of their supply chain in real time as it ebbs and flows, because we know that always happens. And basically, as they're keeping track of that, we take care of all the funding and all the needs along the way, hopefully helping them get to 8 figures. So this is a line lab. We call it a growth plan. And this allows you to map everything out to ensure that nothing's missed and ensure that everything is planned for. And it also lets 8Fig know exactly when to send you funds. So each of these lines would be considered an order, and it maps out your supply chain based on the stages of your order. And it lets 8Fig know, the exact balance you need and what date you need it to pay your suppliers, to pay logistics fees, to do some PPC marketing. And this really helps grow your brand. So we take care of all the funding while you have this visual representation of your supply chain so that you're not missing anything. And it's very, very flexible along the way. It's tailored specifically to e-commerce sellers. So, it really, really helps them grow. And that's our main goal.
So, I mean, my turnaround, I focused a lot in supply chain. I focused a lot on revamping our advertising. And, we have, at least in my e-com company, we have about 250 private label SKUs. And after staring at a tree, after I had sold Stubana, I had this aha moment of like, hey, why are we not changing price? And really started digging into how pricing on Amazon is broken. And so if you go to the next slide, I think it talks a little bit about a lot of people on Amazon, I think a lot of brands specifically on Amazon are kind of stuck in the matrix, right? Amazon kind of wants you to focus on spending more with them, on lowering your price with them, on driving outside traffic. And I think a lot of people lose sight in what their price is because they set a price and they forget about it. And it becomes a static price. And I started really asking the question of why, right? Why is pricing set that way? And how do we price our products? We price it, we look at the competitors, or we mark it up 5x of our costs. And that is all we do. And I started just asking simple questions of why. And because we were operating at a negative operating profit, and I did everything to turn this business around, right? I did all the right things I thought that were right, which is I changed our advertising approach. I cut expenses. I cut all the fat. I redid our listings. I made some 3D rendering images, A+ content. And the one thing that nobody talks about in the space was price. And I started then asking, well, okay, when you take an Uber, and Uber is a marketplace of car drivers, well, you take a Uber in the morning and you're going to the airport, but then maybe if you go at 2 a.m., it's a different price and it's based on demand. And what if we can create a machine learning model that will essentially predict demand and then predict the optimal price based on all the signals and connect those dots for you? So this was for me, I started just eating our own dog food and started building prophecy out around my own pain points. And I think for those that are listening to this call right now, I think it's super important to actually just like essentially start opening up the discussion internally around your price. So develop a cadence around conversation, because price touches everything in your org, right? It touches advertising, it touches your finance team, it touches your marketing team, it touches everything. So centralize pricing internally, create a cadence around it, and maybe even a committee where you start really discussing it, because this lever is a massive swing that can open a big door for you and your business around profitability. So if we just do some quick math here, right? I took the most trite example, which is a garlic press. And you can see here with this math, so we just have the regular numbers at $14.97. I pulled some third-party data here. I think we used Helium 10, and then you can see your absolute profit down below. Now, if you increase price on the next slide, you'll see this amazing impact here. And so this $1 increase, essentially, or a 12% increase in profit, or $1 increase, you were able to increase profit for once you buy 12%. Now, monthly profits increase by $3,400, then the annual profit increases. But then think about every change in your business. has a multiplier effect, right? Because this one change, if you apply a multiple to it of 4x, you're looking at an increase of your enterprise value of $163,000. And that's just if you're increasing price. Now, the most optimal, it's not always the most optimal decision. Like I do see that we do increase prices, at Prophecy, for example, and even if you're doing this without Prophecy, you have a min price, you have a max price, you have your costs associated with the product. But going up in price is not always the most optimal decision. And there's a lot of misinformation about pricing on Amazon today, because if you increase price on Amazon, it actually can kill your growth. It can kill your BSR, it can kill your conversion rate, and your competitors can take share. So you really need to align your pricing and your strategy around the data and let that data help make decisions in your business. And that's really why AI exists, is actually can align the price to the reality of the situation with the data. So if we go to the next slide, you'll see, okay, that's a great idea about increasing price, but it's not always the right decision. So sometimes the right decision is actually to lower price. Lowering price, what does that mean? It means that you typically price and demand have an inverse relationship, typically. So by lowering price, you can increase your demand. And what that does is it increases your velocity, where now you can produce more absolute profit dollars. And that decrease in price offsets, or that increase in velocity offsets that decrease in price, where it results in a lower BSR, meaning you're actually getting a better competitive position on Amazon, where then the snowball effect is that actually will increase your organic placement, where you own that space versus renting it with PPC. So I guess the most important thing is that, like, maybe the takeaway here is that guessing blindly, right, and just pegging a price when you create a product is not always the optimal decision, right? This pricing lever has an ability to actually make you a whole lot more money and value creation that you didn't realize, and align value to your customer at a given time. So calibrating price to the right buyer with the right value, and avoid just listening to somebody saying, hey, just raise price because that's what you need to be doing. There's inflation that's here, raise your price, and that's not always the right decision. And then lastly, I just think just one last point at the bottom there was about muscle, and pricing is a lever that you really need to build a muscle around, and it atrophies if you don't spend time on it. So just wanted to put that out there, and as we segue into the advertising piece.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, so advertising, obviously, pricing super important, advertising also super important. What strategies do you recommend specifically for Amazon sellers advertising on Amazon? I'll let Carolyn take it away.
Yeah. So as much as I hate giving money to Amazon, we'll talk a little bit about, there was a good question in the chat about, well, how do I do this without giving Amazon more money? So we'll talk after this a little bit about how you can increase your revenue and hence your profit by not spending as much on ads. So we'll talk a little bit about organic after this, but we typically say we always start with sponsored products and sponsored display, as well as sponsored video. So sponsored video, gosh, like we get access to a lot of betas as a preferred Amazon agency. And so we were one of the first people to get access to sponsored video beta, like, gosh, I can't remember how many years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, 5, 6 years ago. And we've seen that, like, people who aren't investing in those types of ad placements are really sort of missing the boat. I mean, they don't cost you anymore, and typically, and they convert so much better than just static products, especially if you have a product that if you have a product that needs a little bit of education. So for example, we had these anti-nausea drops, and I turned them into $1 million SKU in like 6 months, and it was all based on sponsored product videos because people saw them, they immediately got it. And that was a very profitable product. And that product was even priced at $12. So we're able to turn that into $1 million SKU. You can do the math on how many of those you have to sell at $12 profitably. And it was all through sponsored video products, getting that just to one of their 30 SKUs to $1 million. And then once we've sort of maxed out those, then we'll move up to sponsored brands, sponsored video, DSP, and then eventually to aiming streaming. But, if you're looking at your budget and this is where we start, and then, you move further up the funnel to the awareness and consideration phase. But definitely we go grab the low hanging fruit first. So if you go to the next slide, we can talk a little bit about, again, once you have the campaign to leverage audiences, every time we audit a brand's advertising, we see this, like that they don't have brand defense campaigns running. They don't have cross-sell campaigns, or they've got brand and non-brand mixed together. And so they really can't see what's going on. So we see a lot of problems with like structure of campaigns. And especially when 70% of searches are on Amazon or brand agnostic, like they're only using generic terms. There's so much non-brand traffic you can get, versus Google. It's harder to make non-brand traffic profitable in a lot of cases. It's really easy to make non-brand traffic profitable on Amazon. So those are the places that we start. And then our favorite one, as we were talking about earlier, was just a competitor campaign. So we go after and we find the ASINs who are cheaper than you, more expensive than you and lower stars than you. And we can just pick off those customers all day long. And they're very profitable, because who wouldn't want a $13.99 garlic press that had 5 stars versus a $14-20 that had 3 stars? So those are some of our best sort of lower funnel campaigns, or ASIN targeting campaigns as well. And then if we, as you move up the funnel, right, DSP, it's kind of expensive, as you know, there's minimums. Streaming TV, we don't love the metrics that are from some of these other placements. We really love a lot more of the data that you can get into and manage. And someone asked about AI. We've tested about 10 of the quote AI tools, and we'll use them to identify things, but we won't let them make decisions. So a great example is we work with a women's fertility brand, and none of the software is caught that horse, dog, cat, pet are not fertility, or not what the terms we want, but they never hit those minimum number of clicks. So the AI the automated software never collects them. So we usually see about, if you use one of the softwares for Amazon, we usually see about 15 or 20% wasted spend. So if you use it, I would still say you got to take a look at it and do some of your own negative keywording, because it just hasn't figured that out yet. I'm sure it'll get there, but it's not there yet. So if you don't want to waste 20%, I'd say, take an hour a week and just look at your own wasted spend there to optimize. And then in terms of what's next, I'm going to turn this over to Chad for PPC and pricing and profit.
Yeah, I just question, what do you typically see as the typical wasted spend for an account that you're managing? Like, what's average, or what is good, what's bad? I'm just curious.
Oh gosh, we it's so funny. It's normally 15 to 20%. We've seen it as high as 50%. We audited a beauty brand earlier this week, and they had literally spent $2,000 last month on a term that had 0 sales. Like that just blew my mind, So we've seen ones that are like more than our monthly retainer in wasted spend.
Wow. And that's wasted spend is defined as what, 30? Is it 30 days out with a clicks and no conversion?
Wasted spend is anything. Yeah. So that's like the extreme case is 0 sales. But we've seen one where, they spent, $1,500 for one sale on a, $40 product. So that to me is like, yeah, we're using such and such software. And then we're like, did you know this was what was happening? So when we point it out, it's sort of a little bit of an aha moment. All it takes is 2 screenshots and people are just and that sort of breaks my heart, right? You trust someone to be looking after things for you, and they're just lighting your money on fire. So we typically see 15 to 20. We've seen as much as 50 to 60% wasted spend.
Got it. Interesting. Really, really interesting.
Your next business,
okay.
Chad.
So I thought I wanted to include this in this presentation specifically around profit as we're discussing profit. And a lot of people look at ad spend as ad spend and price as price. And where I see price coming in is even if you look at ACoS, which is what you spend relative to your revenue, price times units is your revenue, right? So most people are focusing on the numerator and they don't focus on the denominator. Now, this chart, I think, succinctly puts it together is that you can focus on both the numerator and the denominator together, which is your price and your advertising spend and your price, and combined and harmonized, you can actually use that as a lever to actually even make more money. Now, price, in my opinion, drives ad spend. So if you look at this base case, you take this $25 product and you increase the price by 20%. Now, that's great. Okay, you increase price by 20%, but ACoS, here in this case, people always try to have a lower ACoS, but actually you have the ability to increase your ACoS here by 20%. So we're going from 20% to 24%. And what that does is that actually massively impacts your contribution profit. Your overall net profit, which is your gross profit minus your variable expense of ad spend, gives you your contribution profit. Now, ROAS, which is the inverse of ACoS, looks a lot worse. But in this case, POAS, which is your profit on ad spend, looks a whole lot better. So this is a really important case, and I think it's like a good, say, case study to share with people in this presentation that you don't need to necessarily chase ACoS, right? Because it can have a negative consequence and essentially can lead to actually poor spending behavior. But if you actually combine and you work with an agency like Carolyn's, and you're now working with Prophecy and combining price and advertising together and you align it, it actually aligns to your best interest of your company in terms of profitability.
Absolutely. And I think the key thing here too, Chad, is that your FBA fee doesn't change. So the price, the weight, the shipping cost hasn't changed, but you're raising the price by essentially $5, but you're only paying an extra, what's that, 75 cents in referral fees. So you're only paying 15% on your $5 increase, which means you have $4.25 to spend towards advertising, and you're only spending $2.20 towards that advertising. So that's where, like Chad says, that POAS is a really important number. And we've done that too with brands where we've even said, your FBA fee will be the same. You can make a bigger size, charge more for it, and your FBA fee will be the same. Your referral fee will only be 15% more for $5 more in revenue. Who wouldn't take that,
Yeah, so I just think that pricing and harmonizing the two and aligning the two are totally, and like this is something that we have been building at Prophecy is like, yes, our core is our pricing, and we essentially can come up with bid adjustments to give to an agency, for example, to make sure that we know exactly that where our price is going on a weekly basis. And so if we know where pricing is going on a weekly basis, we give that to an advertising company like Carolyn's, and they can essentially programmatically work on bidding on the proper keywords that are going to influence and make sure to generate the most amount of profit possible for your company.
Amazing. Thank you guys. That was super insightful. Appreciate that. Before we move on to kind of the next section, we did have a few questions I wanted to address before we move forward, so they don't get lost in the chat. But the first one is from Peter, and he asks if there is a go-to software that you use to track your profits. He said HelloProfit seems to be a bit archaic at this point.
Chad, is there one you recommend? There's 4 or 5 we've tried.
Any tops on your side? I'm happy to share some.
Yeah, well, we've looked at Managed by Stats. We've looked at let me see, who are the other ones we've looked at? Seller Accountant. A lot of times we build our, people have their own that they build, that they sort of go in and it goes into their own system. So they pull in all of the data via the APIs and sort of create a custom one. So there's only, 2 or 3 we've worked with in the past.
And I know Wes just dropped a good nugget there in the chat. My Real Profit is one. Some people use Sellerboard. Specifically, if you're a customer of Prophecy, we have profit dashboards that we've built, and we will present your profit across the ASINs that are under management. that we're working with, because our North Star metric is profit. So we're delivering profit numbers to the clients that we're working with. But if you're not using Prophecy, right, I think My Real Profit, Seller Board are probably two ones you should look at. Or there's this really small company called Microsoft Excel that you can check out.
But yeah, and most of them, I don't like the ones like you can go into Amazon and it'll give you sort of that quote profit by SKU. But again, I don't like to give Amazon any data. Like I would not want you to put your cogs in there, and and if you only have a few SKUs, you can sort of easily manage it yourself. If you have a lot of SKUs or you're a reseller, you definitely want a like a software. And then the other piece too is just like I said, same thing with transparency. I know I'm totally going off script here, but I don't love anybody doing the transparency program for Amazon, because then it just basically tells them how much market share they have and how much is going to Target and how much is going to Walmart and everything else. So I did see another interesting question on there about like, how do you deal with Amazon checking prices on Amazon versus off Amazon? And one strategy we have to do that is we sort of tell brands, we only work with brands. So we have a little bit, more tuned in strategies than if it were resellers. But if you're a brand, we'll make specific SKUs. So don't put this color out there on the web. So don't, if Amazon can't UPC check against that one out there. So we say either make different sizes or different colors or things that are not available outside of Amazon. So you can price it however you want. Amazon has what they call the dirty five. And those are the people that they go after. So if you're lower on Target, Walmart, I came from the mom and baby company world. So it was like, if Bye Bye Baby or Babies R Us, one of them's out of business now. If they were lower, Walmart, Target, at the time, Jet, Thrive, those were the big ones they would sort of shut you down and take your buy box for. So we try and say, if you want to, if you don't want to lose your buy box, make Amazon specific SKUs that can be your heroes, that you advertise those, and then you never lose the buy box.
Another thing that
Amazing.
I love
Thank
those.
you.
I just one
okay.
last thing on that real quick. I know we have more to discuss, but your map pricing, if you do have map pricing, and I think those are some great suggestions by Carolyn around having like your own Amazon specific SKUs. One other thing you can do is you can take your lowest price on Target, or the price on Target or Sephora or Walmart, wherever you're selling, and that becomes your minimum price. So then you're just exploring those become your max price, and then you're exploring the low end price of those, because Amazon wants you to be at parity or lower on the Amazon channel. So those are other opportunities that you can explore.
Great. Thank you. So our last section here is additional opportunities. We've covered a lot, but if there's any other additional tips that you have for sellers to increase their profitability.
Sure. So as I said, I'll sort of buzz through this pretty quickly, but I would rather not give Amazon a dime. I feel like, I came from Fortune 100, and I feel like those guys don't need any more money. So I'm going to share with you how we get more money without giving Amazon more money, or get more revenue and hence profit. So as you know, your Amazon sales come down to two things, right? Sessions and conversion. How many people are coming to your page? Well, and subscribe and save, but sessions and conversion are the two metrics that you should be looking at for the most part. So how can you affect those things? Sessions, obviously it's having great main images, it's having great titles, it's having organic stuff that ranks. And then conversions, a lot of people really overlook this. They'll just throw a whole bunch of money at ads, and they'll overlook the fact that they have crappy product pages. So I'll go through this real quick. All right, next slide. If you're not already taking advantage of premium A+ content, do it now. It's free, and it can lift your conversion by up to 20%. So also allows you to tell your brand story. So if you don't already have A+ content going, get it. We've seen up to 20% lift. Next slide. Amazon Live, great for demonstrative products. If you need to explain how something works, again, and then that'll go straight to your product detail page. I had to sell laptops on QVC for Dell when I was at Dell, and I sold $1 million worth of laptops in 8 minutes. So live TV works. And Amazon posts. So these are like basically Amazon's social media. If you're not doing them, if you post, you can even use your organic stuff that you're using on other channels, and posts that are using them have like 325% more followers. Why does that matter? If you go to the next slide, it matters because you can then send emails to customers when you have new products or special things going on. So you can basically email customers, you can email your quote followers. So technically you can't own the Amazon customer. You're not supposed to communicate with them. But if you have followers on Amazon, you can then communicate with them. And it's a great way to get stuff going there. Other things you can do to grow your Amazon products, use attribution links from your off Amazon traffic. You get a brand referral bonus. So you get 10 points off of your typical 15-point referral fees if you use attribution links. So you're only paying Amazon 5%. Helpful if you want to rank something or if you got a new product. Google and Pinterest are the ones that Amazon gives the highest credence to over Meta. So if you're going to drive any traffic there, Google's higher intent. If your website's lousy, we've had folks do buy with Prime, and it's actually increased their conversion dramatically. If you don't have a web developer and a great website, you can send them to Amazon to buy, again, lower referral fees. And then of course, affiliates and influencers, as long as you follow the rules, you can use reversion or things like that. Cool. And then this is all great, but if you don't have any product, then this is what happens.
Exactly. So I completely agree with all those tactics. I would also throw in to always just plan for and be prepared for potential stock outs, which I know I briefly touched on earlier. Because as you're building all of this advertising, you don't want to lose momentum by running out of inventory. So a few things to help avoid that are to order shipments more frequently, to bridge any of the gaps that might potentially occur. Rely on a forecasting method that works for you, and to get to know your seasonality, really know your supply chain and the busy seasons, the slow seasons, so that you can always be prepared for those, and just always stay nimble, stay on your toes. As we know, supply chains ebb and flow. There's always something crazy that potentially might happen. So just being prepared for all of those situations is super important.
Great. Thank you, Jen. So we are now in our Q&A portion. I don't see any questions in the Q&A box, so we'll give you guys a second here to jot some down in there if you have questions for our panelists.
Hey, Katie, did we have a slide in there on organic? I know there was a question about organic optimization. I don't know if that made it in or we decided to cut it out.
I don't think that one made it in, but you're welcome to talk on it if you would like before we get to Q&A.
Sure. Well, we're waiting for questions. The person who asked about organic. So there's a couple things that we have done. So we have a sort of what we call a killer image listing guide, right? No point in paying to get traffic to your page if your page doesn't convert. So there's 6 sort of specific images and 1 video that convert best when people get to your page. So it's everything from, all the standard stuff, your title, your bullets, your description, your backend fields, but specifically images. And if you're not doing A/B testing, we've seen where we did a 15% turn on a model, and it increased their conversion rate by 15%. They didn't spend a dime more in advertising. They had the same number of people come to their product page, but they got a 15% increase in advertising. We did the same thing with like a shoe cleaner brand. We changed their images, and we have these great case studies. Their ROAS increased by 100%. So literally they doubled their ROAS. And I know ROAS isn't always the best metric, but double the number of people that were coming to their page after we changed the images, purchase the product. So I think it's often overlooked is all the organic optimizations that you should be making. And if you're not A/B testing main images, and if you're not A/B testing A+ content, like these are things that can increase your conversion rate. We've seen anywhere from 15 to 40% just by changing up the product detail page.
Wow, thank you so much for adding that in. And sorry, the slide must have gotten a cut at the end there.
No problem.
It looks like we do have a few questions that came in. The first one is David, and he's asking, is it possible to connect brand followers directly?
Yeah, good question. So you mean like, can you connect one brand follower to another brand follower? I'm not sure about that. But are you just asking, can you connect with your brand followers directly? Yes, but it has to be through the Amazon platform. So sadly, they don't give you their email addresses, but you can communicate with them almost like as if it was like, Facebook Messenger, like where you can communicate with them. It's pretty basic, as you know, everything Amazon launches starts pretty basic, and then they sort of hone it in over time.
Great, thank you. We have another one, anonymous, but it says, what are some best practices for determining the most relevant keywords / search terms to maximize ROI?
Chad, well, you have an e-commerce business. I'll let you go first.
Yeah, so what I would do is I would look at what our conversion rate is on a keyword basis. And because like essentially, at least what I've seen in my own business is that we drive traffic without thinking about if it converts. And I think Amazon wants intent when people arrive at a product detail page because they want people to convert. So I would be spending most of my dollars and time thinking about what are the highest intent, highest converting keywords that I want to advertise against, which will bring my overall conversion rate on a listing up, and you're not driving crappy traffic to a listing.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do the same. The first thing you do, like say you're not using a software, you basically just sort your campaigns by spend and revenue, last month, because obviously the last 7 days might not have come in. Just look at that, find your wasted spend, go. And a lot of people just go to the campaign level, go to the ad group level, go to the keyword level, right? The other thing, Chad mentioned Helium 10. There's some pretty decent, we have some pretty sophisticated tools we use for Google, but Helium 10 has, I think some pretty decent ones. The other thing we do, same thing we do on Google for like Google Shopping, we'll run what we call a penny campaign. Just run like a catch-all for 5 cents, like for each product, like an auto campaign where we've seen those have ridiculous ROAS, and you get these terms you've never even considered. Most people make the mistake of running an auto campaign, throwing a bunch of products in there and bidding way too much. So don't bid more than, 5 to 10 cents max. And that's where you might find some gems. And then the other thing is the search impression share is a little bit crap on on Amazon, but you can use it as a guide and look at like if there's anything that's very profitable, keywords that are super profitable, make sure those are maxed out. You can use search impression share as a guide. It's never going to be 100%. It's not as good as Google, but we always say max out what's working, kill what's not. I mean, I know it sounds really basic, but you'd be so surprised how few people actually do that.
Great, thanks guys. It looks like we have, it seems like maybe 2-3 more. We'll see how much time we have, but we'll start with Alexia's question. She goes, hey guys, which recommendations for advertising strategies? What is your basic structure for different type of campaign and goals?
Carol, I'm going to let you take this, and I'll definitely
sure,
add
and then
some
you can
exclamation
chime
marks.
in.
Yeah.
Like I said, make it so you can easily, all our reporting, we can like report on brand versus non-brand versus, all these different things. So make it logical. So first of all, brand, non-brand keywords, competitor campaigns, watch out for things like loose match. We've seen like people like throw a whole bunch of money into loose match, only do close match. ASIN targeting is probably one of the most profitable ones to find those dog products, and go from there. And then if you have enough products, definitely sponsored display, sponsored brands to do brand protection and do that on your high converting keywords. That's a really basic structure. We go into a lot more, but yeah, try and make it logical, so you can see what's going on in there.
And from my side, I mean, for my own e-com business, the way we've structured it is all around profit and understanding how we want PPC to contribute to the overall business. And so really what we want to use is leverage up our Amazon spend, our advertising spend, to maximize our profitability. So we've essentially switched and transitioned a focus of these revenue embedded metrics to profit metrics, number one. And then we've also come up with what our goal is across our company to really transform our PPC performance. And so we have like an overall POAS goal that we target internally. And then we manage performance and use POAS to guide our tacos and to guide our ACOS, for example. And yeah, that's where we focus most of our time. In terms of like just campaign type distribution, right? I would say we spend most of our dollars, let's just say 80% of that is on sponsored products. And then we have 15% focusing on sponsored brand, and then a small little percentage on sponsored display and other, let's just say discovery experimentation.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great. That's great. The 80-20 rule, like put 80% of your money into what's working and then test with 10 or 20%.
Great. We have about what seems like maybe a minute left, so we'll try to get through maybe a couple more questions. But the first one I'm seeing here is, what other advertising channels or strategies off Amazon can sellers explore to diversify ads and better manage the impact of rising costs?
Yeah. When I product launched things for a mom and baby company, every time we product launched, I would actually send the first email to Amazon and do like a small promo code to juice it. This was before Vine existed on Seller Central, so I'm totally dating myself. Vine used to only be available on Vendor Central. So we would use a little bit of our, we had a 30,000 person list, and so we would use that. Obviously, influencers, reversion, Amazon affiliates, all of those things.
Great. Okay. Looks like we have one. We'll do one more before we all hop here.
Yeah. Let me tell you one thing about the stores, and then John, feel free to, I think you're going to put our QR codes up there, right?
Oh, yes, I am.
Katie,
Thanks for the reminder, Carolyn.
Feel free to follow up afterwards, and I'm happy to answer your question offline, John. I'm sure Chad can too. On the stores, how much emphasis do you put in there? You want to have a really good store, especially if you have a good, if you have a large product catalog. We work with a triathlon brand, and actually it's great because their AOV goes up because they discover more products from the brand. So Prime Day was just announced for the 11th and 12th officially. They officially finally announced it. We all knew it was the 11th and 12th, but and so a lot of people on their store, if you're doing any Prime Day deals, for stuff that's super high margin, whatever, create a deals tab on your store. And then we've seen that work really well too. So you can run ads to your store. And then we see that people, really pick up on those deals because they don't do a great job merchandising the deals unless your SKU is like $1 million a year or more. So that's how we use stores, especially during Prime Day and holidays.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, and then you mentioned that you would connect with John after, so I'll let you guys handle that one. But my last question on here is, what recommendations for profit do you have if you are competing against a brand who does not seem to care about profit?
That's for you, Chad.
So I think in terms of price specifically, first of all, making sure that all your detail page, your images are all up to date, but assuming that you have fairly compelling images and assets on Amazon, changing pricing relative to what your competitors do is an important part of our strategy specifically. So we do reverse ASIN lookup, where we pull in and we see with small changes how your competition reacts to price changes, and if they do or they don't, and seeing how Amazon reacts and how your customers react. So we're pulling all those signals into the model. That's what we do specifically. You can do that again if you create your own spreadsheet and you're managing to specific KPIs and intent around small price changes and doing this manually. If you email me, my personal email is chad@prophecy.com. I can give you a spreadsheet that I used to use back in the day to really centralize as a hub all my small price tweaks. And I'm happy to share that. And you can see how your competition reacts when you make these changes, and seeing how maybe Amazon reacts and your BSR reacts to your price changes to maximize profit.
Great. Thank you. And with that, Chad mentioned how you could reach out to him. Here on this last slide, you can see a QR code for each person here on the panel. I just want to say thank you to Chad, Carolyn, and Jen for joining us today. I think it was super insightful, learned a lot. I'm hoping everyone who tuned in also got something out of this. For those listening, we will send out a recording within 48 hours. But until then, thank you guys so much for joining and being on our panel. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us,
Thanks for
Katie.
having us.
Yes, thank you.
Absolutely. Everyone have a good day and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.